What is up guys, Alex from Lakey Wargames here and welcome to today's video where we're going to be covering the brand new and very exciting new rules expansion for Nighthaunt with the Scourge of Ghyran update. This gives us 2 brand new battle formations, 3 brand new artifacts of power and 2 of the new variant Warscrolls to be able to use alongside the rest of our army into our faction pack in accordance with the update to the General's Handbook 2025-2026 season that is soon to be upon us. I will link in the description below the article for the Warhammer community link, which will bring you to the PDF that I'm going to bring up on the screen shortly as we go through it and cover these new exciting rules for us to be able to use. And I did in a separate video, I covered the brand new terrain, the Nexus of Grief, that was also recently released for us, brand new Nighthaunt rules to use, and we will be referencing back to that in today's video. So if you want to go check that one out, the link will be in the description below. Made that one a few days ago. Recommend checking that one out before we get too deep on into this one, in case you haven't already seen those terrain rules. But if you have, a lot of that's already going to make sense to you. And I will timestamp the various parts of this video, so if you want to just see the artifacts or just see the new war scrolls, etc., you'll be able to jump to those various timestamps. Bear in mind that I haven't playtested any of these. These are just going to be my thoughts and sort of first impressions, things as I've read them, a few ideas that I've got kind of going around in my mind about how to be able to sort of implement these new rules alongside our war scrolls. So do take that with a pinch of salt in mind, that obviously these are kind of hypothetical tactical situations and none of this has actually been tested by myself yet. As whether they might be the go-to options. So as always, feel free to leave any comments in the comments section below about your opinions and your thoughts on these sort of new artifacts and new battle formations. If you maybe agree with me, or maybe if you don't disagree with me, or if there's a point that maybe I didn't quite highlight and there's another sort of pro or con to said element of these brand new rules that have been given to us. But with all that said and done and out the way, let's get on into today's video and get talking about this Nighthaunt Scourge of Ghyran update. Alrighty, so here is the Scourge of Ghyran faction rules for Nighthaunt. There is 2 pages to this brand new PDF document, and like I said, we've got 2 brand new battle formations, 3 artifacts of power, and 2 brand new variant war scrolls to be getting on with in today's discussion. So let's waste no time at all and jump straight into this first one, which is going to be our battle formations, and we get to add these battle formations to the Nighthaunt faction rules. So first up we have Hungry Nexus. This is a once per turn army, end of the enemy turn. Greedy for souls. Declare, pick a friendly Nexus of Grief, so that's the new terrain feature. You can have between 1 and 3 of the Nexus of Grief deployed. So with the once per turn army, you're only going to be able to pick 1 of the up to 3 Nexus of Grief, depending how many you have on the table at the time you use this. You'll only be able to pick 1 of the terrain features. For the effect is, for the rest of the turn, the target has a move characteristic of 3 inches. It can immediately move up to 3 inches and can also move into combat, but not end that move on a terrain feature or within 3 inches of an objective. So this is a really interesting one. If you've seen the Nexus of Grief War Scroll, which we already spoke about in that previous video, like I mentioned at the start, the Nexus of Grief itself can actually teleport. So being able to move at the end of the enemy turn, I'm not sure how actually useful that's going to be. I mean, it's useful if it could do it without taking up an entire battle formation, because the Nexus of Grief shuts off enemy command abilities when they get within 3 inches, which is obviously something that's very, very useful to be able to do. But the main thing I think the Nexus of Grief is going to be bringing to the table is that healing factor that it has. Which it already is going to be able to do because it teleports within 3 inches of a friendly Nighthaunt unit. And, you know, moving into combat or into within the 3 inches of the enemy to shut off commands is going to be very useful. But at the same time, if you're getting within that kind of range, then the enemy is going to be able to hit and target the Nexus of Grief rules as they are at the moment, whether maybe this changes at some point going forward, how you're able to interact with sort of enemy faction terrain. But at the moment, if you get within that 3-inch combat range, then the enemy's just going to be able to kill the Nexus of Grief itself. You'll lose all the ability to be able to shut off commands and heal your own troops anyway. So I don't think moving the Nexus of Grief within that kind of danger zone is going to be something that's going to be all too helpful. And like I said, these battle formations, obviously, if you're already familiar with the Nighthaunt faction pack, Deathstalkers, the one that allows us to pick a unit each turn to be able to run and charge and or retreat and charge, is the kind of bread and butter game-winning one. And I don't think Hungry Nexus even comes close to Deathstalkers. But this next one here, the Death Rust Geists, is one that I do actually think has some potential to maybe give Deathstalkers a run for its money, which is very exciting in its own right. So let's get on into that one. And that is, again, a once per turn army. You use this in the enemy hero phase, and it gives you the ability Blades of Eternal Rust. Declare, pick an enemy unit that is in combat with a friendly Nighthaunt unit to be the target. Subtract 1 from save rolls for the target for the rest of the turn. So I think this is really, really exciting. Again, it's only once per turn and it's in the enemy hero phase. So you're going to be picking this in your off turns. Obviously, at the moment, the way that our auras of dread work, stun is a very, very popular aura. And, you know, that's the one that gives -1 to save to enemy units when you charge them with either a cavalry or a war machine unit. So ideally like your Hex Race or your Black Coach, something like that. When you charge into them, you can give them -1 to save. This would be amazing to be able to pair that with it, but this is in the enemy hero phase. But at the same time, that said, although those two things don't quite go well together, knowing how impactful that -1 to save is when you use the stun on your turn, this is going to give you access to essentially the same thing, but now on the off turn. Of course, the stipulation is that you pick an enemy unit that's in combat with a friendly Nighthaunt unit or units in the enemy hero phase. So that means your units are already going to have to be locked in combat with the enemy to be able to use this one. It's not going to work if you're not in combat in the enemy hero phase. They charge you later on in their charge phase because you need to be using this in their hero phase. But one of the weaknesses, in my opinion, to Nighthaunt has always been sort of sustained combat. It's not something that we're really particularly fond of. We like being able to sort of gang up on the enemy, charge 2 or 3 units into a single enemy unit, stack a load of debuffs on the charge or with spells or abilities in our turn to really tip the sort of fight into our favor and kind of one-shot the enemy completely with those really favorable odds for us, and kind of dooming them that way, rather than sort of doing a fair fight unit on unit sustained combat over multiple rounds. It's just not usually something that we're very good at. But this is going to really, really help if one of your units gets stuck. And straight away I can think of a multitude of units that are actually going to really, really love getting that -1 to save rolls. The first ones that come to mind are Mirmorn Banshees, because they're Ren 2 base. Basically anything that is Ren 2 base is going to really love being able to use this ability. Mirmorn Banshees, the Lord Executioner is another one. The Black Coach is another one. But especially those Mirmorn Banshees being Ren 2, now becoming essentially Ren 3, because you're going to -2 their save from your Rend, -1 to their save from this Blades of Eternal Rust, giving them Ren 3 damage D3 attacks per Banshee is going to be absolutely awesome. And also the other one that's really, really going to like this ability, which is already really strong, already really popular at the moment for us Nighthaunt, are our Grimghast Reapers, being, you know, 2 attacks base. They're only Rend 1, but they have anti-infantry +1 Rend, so it makes them Rend 2 if they're in an infantry fight. They have the crit auto wounds on 6s, which is basically army-wide for us Nighthaunt, but then they crit auto wound on 5s if they're fighting against 5 or more enemy unit size. And then if you use Blades of Eternal Rust and you just happen to be fighting an enemy infantry unit with more than 5 models, you're now going to be Ren 3, 2 attacks per model, auto-critting on 5s, which is absolutely insane. And the big combo with Grimghast Reapers at the moment that's super, super popular is using the Light Shard artifact, which is a once per game ability to give your friendly units wholly within a 12-inch bubble +1 attack. So then you can make Grimghast Reapers 3 attacks. And if you're using it from a Kern Wraith as well, he has the bubble built in on his Warscroll that gives Grimghast Reapers an extra attack while he's in combat and wholly within range of the Reapers themselves. So you can now have Rend 3, auto wounding on 5s, Grimghast Reapers with 4 attacks each, obviously an extra attack as well for your champion, so the champion's going to be swinging on 5s, 5 attacks. Insane. Yeah, you go toe to toe with something. Think of a unit like Chaos Warriors, like a 20 stack of Chaos Warriors or 10 stack of Stormcast Eternals. Enemies that are usually trying to, I mean, anvils in 4th edition just aren't very popular at all at the moment. The meta kind of favors having big hammer units just run in and destroy things. But this Blades of Eternal Rust is really going to sort of help chunk down those units that don't want to be there. Like I said, a 20 brick of Chaos Warriors is something that's quite prevalent at the moment. They've got a 3-up save, you know, they're usually relying on that. They'll try and get Oracular Visions for a 5+ ward, but sometimes you'll see a list that has 10 Chosen and 20 Warriors, and maybe that buff's gone onto the Warriors instead, onto the Chosen, sorry. So the Warriors are just sitting on a 3-up save. You suddenly come in with your Grimghast Reapers, with your 80-odd attacks, with your 20-man unit. They're also Rend 3. I mean, when you charge in, obviously, like I said, this is going to be on the enemy turn. But you go in, you charge in, you know, you're still Rend 2. Then on their hero phase, you're suddenly becoming Rend 3. There's going to be a lot of potential for a lot of damage there. Again, I still think out of, even with these 2 battle formations added in, Deathstalkers is probably going to be the bread and butter winner 9 times out of 10. I think just the mobility that it gives is kind of unparalleled. Being able to use something like a 10-man unit of Hex Wraiths or a Black Coach and be able to give it that kind of retreat and charge for free just opens up so much of the board. And even on troops like 20 Grimghast Reapers, just being able to retreat them out, relocate them, bring the fight elsewhere is just so good. But this one, the Blades of Eternal Rust, is definitely one that I think I'm going to be playing a few times, try and get a feel for it. It really kind of, you know, puts the enemy into a bit of a bind, because when you choose to do this in the enemy hero phase, they're going to be thinking like, do I want to stay in combat with that unit now that they're getting an extra Rend? There's lots of other ways to stack this up as well. If you have a Purple Sun on the table, then obviously they're going to be -2 to their save, plus whatever your Rend is. So again, like, you could even get Grimghast Reapers up to essentially Rend 4, which is just disgusting. So yeah, there's lots of things there. Lady Ollander's spell, her Warscroll spell that negates the enemy from any positives to their saves, you know, hit and wounds, that kind of thing. Like, getting your Rend and their save down so low, and then being able to be like, well, now you get no all-out defense, anything like that. Even then, with the new terrain features and such, again, if they get within that 3-inch bubble, there's loads of ways that we can now shut commands off too. So very powerful force multiplier, I think, this Blades of Eternal Rust, and it's definitely going to favor different playstyles. Like I said, we usually don't like that kind of stand up and grind fight, but now we have an option to do so. Whether it's going to be more competitive than Deathstalkers, time will tell. I don't think so, just because Deathstalkers opens up not only that kind of offensive output, but also plays into objectives because it gives you more flexibility within your movement. But Blades of Eternal Rust is certainly going to open up a bunch of stronger punch builds even. Yeah, it's just going to open up so many doors to make units hit so much harder, and I don't think that's going to be something that's going to be underestimated. We've seen a few different changes already with some of the articles. I haven't covered them yet because they're kind of giving us to us piecemeal, and I don't like covering things where we don't have the full picture. But we do know there are some changes happening to things like all-out attack and all-out defense. So we'll wait until the General's Handbook comes out in full to see how things go down in that regard. But something like this is very exciting because, again, it's just helping to that offensive output, and I think it's going to open up some more builds there. So those are the 2 battle formations. Again, I still think they're overshadowed by Deathstalkers, but we shall see. Let's move on and talk about these Artefacts of Power. Now, we've got 3 of these here. And again, they operate in the same way as choosing an Artifact of Power like you would out of the faction pack. So you can't give them to unique heroes. You can only choose one of them. If you choose one of these, that would be instead of the ones in the faction pack. So you kind of choose either or, and you'll get 1 per your army. The first one here, we have the Stave of Suffering. The effect is, while this unit is wholly within 12 inches of any damaged enemy units, any enemy units or any enemy units that have had any models slain, add 1 to casting rolls for friendly Nighthaunt units while they are wholly within 12 inches of this unit. I've seen a few people talk about this one and they kind of put this on the back burner, but I actually quite like the sound of this one. The main stipulation to this is a lot of people will think this kind of instantly, it sounds very familiar to the Dreadblade, not Dreadblade Harris, the Dread Scythe Harridans, sorry, where they get buffs to their hit and wound statistics as they fight near enemies that have been damaged or had anything slain, but their stipulation is they have to have models slain in the same turn, whereas the Stave, you just have to be within 12 inches. It's not even wholly within a unit that's had any models slain, just slain outright. So if they lose a model on turn 1, you get in range of them, say turn 3, that will still turn on the Stave. And this can be any enemy units, you know, you don't have to pick one. So if there's 2 units within 12 inches of you and one of them moves away, but one of them stays within the 12, then you're still going to be able to get this. And that's not +1 casting to the person that's carrying the Stave, it's to all friendly Nighthaunt units that are going to be wholly within 12 inches of the guy that's holding it. So for example, you give this to a Guardian of Souls, and Lady Olinda and Reikenor are also in your list. They're both within 12 inches of the Guardian of Souls, who's within 12 inches of an enemy that's been damaged or had a model slain. They're both going to get, all 3 of them are actually going to get all +1 to their casting rolls. And this will stack nicely with Reikenor especially. Someone pointed this out to me in the Lakey Wargames Discord when we were talking about this when it first came out. And that is that obviously if he uses his corpse candles to buff himself, so he gets an extra spell and an extra casting value, and you're also buffing him with a Stave, then he's going to get +2 to his casting rolls for those things, which is really, really nice. Of course, if you're also next to a place of power at the moment, the terrain feature, where you get to roll the dice, and on a 2+, you get +1 to your cast as well. So you can potentially give someone like Reikenor now +3 to cast. You could do the same thing with Nagash. You could technically make Nagash a 4+ cast because he's +2 based on his Warscroll, place of power, and the Stave. The only thing with the Stave is obviously it's staying within 12 of the enemy and then also within 12 inches of the user. So there's a bit of kind of board management, staying both within those bubble stipulations, making sure that, you know, it's within a wounded unit. But we've got plenty of tricks and things to be able to damage enemy units and kill things out of turn like that. And to be honest, I think there's only a couple of mid-game turns where, you know, when the lines clash and things start to happen, that you're going to make the most out of using the Stave. Even just casting spells like your Spectral Law or getting the Shade Mist off at a key time are things that can win you the game. And again, the Stave is just going to really, really help you do that. Whether you want to give up Light Shard, which is the most popular one at the moment, that +1 attack, but the Stave does have the thing of obviously it's passive, so it's just on all the time as long as you're meeting the effects to be able to trigger it. So I really do think there's going to be a lot of play in that one, especially if you favour your magic armies. Again, like Lady Olinda being a 2-cast wizard is going to love if you can get the effects of that off, as will Reikenor when he uses his corpse candles. So yeah, although it's, you know, probably not going to be everyone's favourite, I think this one is going to be definitely worth testing, and I'm excited to be able to see what we can do with the Stave there. Next up, we have the Amulet of Waking Nightmares, and this one is you choose in your hero phase. You pick a visible enemy hero within 18 inches of this unit to be the target. You roll a dice, and on a 3+ for the rest of the turn, the target cannot be affected by the Guarded Hero ability or the Obscuring Terrain ability. This one, right now, if you were to take into consideration like what our shooting units have in the faction pack, Guarded Hero is the one where if your foot hero is stood within combat range of a friendly unit, then they're -1 to be hit, and same with the Obscuring Terrain. When you're trying to shoot someone, the main shooting unit in Nighthaunt at the moment is obviously our Craven Throne Guard. and those guys are unaffected by hit modifiers anyway, so this doesn't actually really do anything for them at all. It would help with some very niche applications if you take the faction pack Black Coach with its lash, or if you use Lady O's her veil attack. But to be honest, those are, shooting units that aren't worth taking a whole Artifact of Power for, when you could use something like the Stave or the very popular Light Shard or any other artifact, to be honest. So this one gives me a bit of a food for thought, in that maybe, obviously I was going to say maybe Games Workshop knows something that we don't. Obviously they know something that we don't, because I mean, they write the rules and they know them way before we do. But the Nighthaunt Battle Tome is soon to be upon us. Maybe we're going to see something, that's going to be able to use this more often, or more than likely the Craven Throne Guard ability is going to get changed. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I think Amulet of Waking Nightmares is an artifact that's probably been given to us with sort of some future amendments in mind. So right now this one is very not good, but that might be something that's due to change, and it'll be exciting to see when the Battle Tome drops if this one actually gains any more value than it has, because right now I can't think of anything that's really making use of that without any sort of drastic rules changes. The last artifact of power we have on the list here is a passive. It's the Tombstone of the Penitent, and what happens is you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of this unit's melee weapons for each non-faction terrain feature that is being contested by friendly units to a maximum of 8. To be honest, I think this one is a bit of a meme kind of artifact. Giving yourself pluses to attack to heroes is quite cool. The unit itself obviously doesn't have to be contesting the terrain feature, so you can have multiple different units in your army as long as they are contesting non-faction terrain features, which is they just have to be stood within their combat range of a terrain feature to be counting as contesting it for that turn. And yeah, you get +1 attack to a maximum of 8, which also seems like a really random number to be able to get +8 attacks on a hero. Again, it could be funny to do something. We don't actually have too many out-and-out combat heroes that would probably make use of this. Things I could think of are Knight of Shrouds, either foot or on steed version, and again probably the Lord Executioner. He is our sort of one out-and-out non-unique combat hero that could actually pick this up. I probably wouldn't, in a competitive build, I can't see this actually being too much useful factor, because to be able to, make the use of getting that +8 attacks, it means all of your units are going to have to be trying to stand near terrain pieces, and that might necessarily mean that you're not contesting objectives, fighting enemy units. It could line up nicely, if everything comes up exactly how you want it, and it lines up that you can get the Tombstone and also be doing objectives and fighting the enemy all near terrain. But more often than not, that's probably not going to be the case. But there could be some fun applications for the Tombstone there. But again, I think a bit of a memey build with that one, so I'd be interested to see how that actually goes out. But of these three here, I think that the Stave has the most play potential. Again, you've got to make sure that you're doing the dance to get within the 2 bubbles, but I think for the couple of turns that you'll be able to really make use of that, that's going to be much more effective. Amulet, we'll wait and see, because I think we're probably going to see rules changes, or maybe a new unit that has lots of shooting and can do something where we'll be able to make use of this more often than not. And Tombstone is neat, but yeah, that sounds a bit more memey to me than, you'd be going out of your way a lot to be able to make that something more than it actually is. So those are the artifacts of power, and let's go on to page 2 and look at these very, very exciting. I'm sure you've probably already seen or heard about these. We have 2 new variant Warscrolls. These do not replace the ones in the faction pack. You won't be able to use them at the same time. So we've got Kurdos Valentian, the Craven King, and we also have the Black Coach as our 2 variant Warscrolls. So if you take the Scourge of Ghyran Kurdos, so that you take this Warscroll here, you can't also use Kurdos from the faction pack. But if you didn't want to use this Kurdos here, then you can use the other one instead. So it's basically like an either or type situation. Same with the Black Coach. If you like this one here, then you can use this one instead of the one in the faction pack. But if you don't like this one, then you can continue to use the one out of the faction pack instead. So let's start off with Kurdos here. He is the same stat-wise as the old Kurdos, the same move, the same save, the same health control, and a 6+ ward. With his melee weapons, he's lost the, he used to have the sort of ghostly attendance attacks, and his scepter is actually exactly the same hit, wound, rend, and damage, but he's gained an extra scepter attack to make up for the loss of his sort of minions, which used to be 6 attacks, 4s and 4s, no rend, and 1 damage, so they were pretty pitiful and didn't do anything anyway. So having an extra scepter attack is going to be much more efficient. And he has 2 brand new abilities. So he used to have an old ability where you would roll dice, and on a 3+, when an enemy declared a command within 12 inches of Kurdos, you'd roll a dice, and on a 3+, they wouldn't be able to use the command, but they still burned the command points for using that ability. That's completely gone. He doesn't do any of that anymore, but instead he's gained these 2, which in my opinion are way better and have much more applications to them. So let's get into what those are, and then we'll see in total what we think of this new Kurdos. So the first one is a passive ability. It's called Inescapable Mockery, and you add 1 to the hit and wound rolls for this unit's combat attacks that target an enemy unit that has a lower control characteristic than this unit. Now, this is one of the things I actually joked about slightly when I did the full Nighthaunt faction pack review, that Kurdos has a control value of 5, which just seems really high for a unit, for an infantry hero on foot. Infantry hero to have a control score value of 5. Everything else seems to have a control score value of 2, unless you're like a really big, really big named hero. But even for Nighthaunt, like Lady O is still only control value 2. Reikenor is only control value 2. It's only when you start looking at like really big heroes on monstrous mounts, someone like an like Arcan or Archaon, those kind of heroes that have the bigger control values. Obviously when you get to things like Gargants and stuff, they have insane control values. But Kurdos, for in a Nighthaunt versus Nighthaunt comparison, just seemed to have a really high control value compared to everyone else. So whether they were forward thinking with something like this, or they just sort of caught onto it and thought, actually this is going to be something cool that we can give to Kurdos. So this is going to make his attacks feel so much more weighty, changing that to 2s and 2s. With his Rend 2, damage 3. Obviously, we have that brand new battle formation. So if Kurdos gets stuck into combat with an enemy and then it flips to the enemy's hero phase and he's still in that combat, you can now be 5 attacks, 2s and 2s, Rend 3, damage 3 with crit auto wounds, which is going to make Kurdos feel so much better. Even if you get hit by debuffs, if you're being able to use this mockery ability, going to 3s and 2s is going to feel so much better than going to 4s and 3s like he used to. And again, you even have that extra attack in there rather than having 4 attacks. Often one of the things that make Kurdos feel a bit like a sort of wet noodle when he used to get in. Movement 8 obviously isn't the worst, but for us Nighthaunt, that's like standard infantry movement. So compared to a lot of other things in the roster, especially like your more like your cavalry and things, you'd spend the first couple of turns trying to get Kurdos into the right combat, and then when he did get there, he could just whiff so hard. And being this new Kurdos here, like I said, is 190 points, exactly the same as the old one right now, but that already just has so much more combat power for the points that you're paying. 200 points is a lot for Nighthaunt. In terms of especially like our heroes and things. Combat prowess isn't always something that we've exactly needed. A lot of our troops, Blakegeist Revenants, Grimghast Reapers, are always super punchy anyway. So, you know, Kurdos was always kind of one of those nice afterthoughts. Like, you always want to take Kurdos because he's just really cool, and having a big kind of beatstick hero was nice, but he's just too expensive and under punchy. But already he's just, that's so much improvement. Before we even get into this one here, which is in any combat phase, so you'll be using this in your turn and your opponent's turn in the combat phase. A Traitor's Legacy. And what happens is you declare, if this unit is in combat, you pick a friendly, visible Nighthaunt unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. And the effect is you pick one of the following to apply for the rest of the turn. So we have Regicide and Kinslaying. The target's melee weapons have anti-hero +1 rend. So that's really nice. Obviously, if you get stuck into a fight with a enemy hero who suddenly jumps in, +1 rend. You could even use that brand new formation to, lower the enemy save by 1. All of a sudden, once again, we're getting +2 rend essentially on things. So that's really, really nice. Again, only versus heroes, but with someone like Kurdos, and especially with his lore, he wants to be going in and punching heroes in the face anyway, so that's very, very fitting. We also have Usurpation and Larceny, where you can add 5 to the target's control score. So that's really, really nice to be able to sort of wrestle key objectives off of the enemy. Kurdos is already bringing 5 control. All of a sudden, you're bringing a unit with you. Say you've got something like 20 Grimghast Reapers. They're bringing 20, he's bringing 5. All of a sudden, you add another 5 to them. You've got 30 control score on objective, which is just insane. So that's going to be something that's really, really nice if you need it in a pinch to take that objective. And the last one here is Sedation and Betrayal. Enemy units cannot use commands while they are in combat with the target, which is really, really cool. We've seen with the Nexus of Grief, obviously that's a new way to be able to shut off enemy commands. This kind of feels like a nice throwback to the thing that he was doing anyway, where he was turning off commands, but that was locked behind a dice roll. Obviously, it's slightly different because you're not burning the enemy command points anymore, but you're just stopping enemy commands in total that are in combat with the enemy. So in a way, I think that's actually nicer because you're not reliant on that dice roll. They don't have to be sort of using commands within range of Kurdos. Like, you just get into combat with enemy and you're like, nope, no commands of any sorts for you in this command. So yeah, I really, really like this new Kurdos Warscroll. I think he's actually going to feel so much nicer to use. In the grand scheme of something like competitive and going forward, I don't think that this scroll is good enough to be like auto include. I still think Lady O brings much more to the table, being like a 2-cast wizard, having her healing. And then, when you start thinking down the things, you've got people like Aurich who can teleport units and do really nice alpha strikes. You've got Reikenor, who again plays into that kind of nice wizard support role, and Reikenor actually has. It's one of the things that we always found funny, that Reikenor, especially when he buffs himself fighting into enemy wizards and priests with his Fel Reaper, actually had better attacks than Kurdos, even though Kurdos was supposed to be the combat hero. I think in a competitive build, those heroes are going to be much more useful to you. But if you bring Kurdos, you're definitely going to want to bring the Scourge of Ghyran version of him. And when you do, he's going to feel so much better. So much better. So you won't feel bad for bringing him. And he's going to be a lot more consistent as well, especially with this Inescapable Mockery, his high control score. There's not a lot of things in the game that are going to be able to sort of out control him. And if when you're deploying those kind of things, you'll see them coming anyway, just try and get Kurdos into a different sort of combat that way. And yeah, I think he's going to feel much, much better. So let's talk about the next Warscroll here. And this is one that a lot of people, myself included, are very, very hyped for. And that is the Black Coach. Obviously, the Black Coach as a miniature is absolutely fantastic. Centerpiece worthy of any kind of Nighthaunt collection, but has always had rules that are slightly not very fitting of such a centerpiece worthy model. It's always felt a little kind of like Games Workshop don't quite know what they want to do with it. We've had 3 different variations of Black Coaches in the 4 editions so far, and each time the Black Coach has been wildly different from those before it. And to be honest, this Scourge of Ghyran one is the 4th iteration of the Black Coach in Age of Sigmar, and again, it's very, very different. So let's get on into it, and then we'll talk more about that. So once again, the Warscroll starts off as the same things like health, movement, save, control, ward save. Very, very what we're familiar with. The melee weapons, the spectral weapons are what you'd expect. They're the same as before. 5 attacks, 3s, a rend 2, damage 2. You now get +1 damage on the charge, which is really, really nice. You'll notice once again the sort of the horses, the mounts attacks is gone, and as are the spectral, the relic bearers, so like the ghosts that are floating around it, they've all gone, and instead we've now got the iron shod wheels. And these are awesome. 8 attacks, hit on 4s, wound on 3s, rend 2, damage 2, which again, a bit like Kurdos, like the ghost attacks used to be, they were numerous. You used to have 6 attacks from the relic bearers, I think it was. You had 8 attacks from the horses, but they were like a bunch of nothing attacks, like 4s and 4s, 5s and 4s, no rend 1 damage. So we've got rid of one of the stat lines completely, in essence. You've gone from 3 lots of attacks to 2, but these are, you know, both being rend 2, damage 2 with your crit auto wounds is amazing. And as we'll see, we'll get down to this ability here. We can make these even better. You've lost the shooting attack, but we've gained +1 damage on the charge with the spectral wraith weapons, which is something that I trade for any day, because the shooting attack on the black coach was just kind of pitiful. It was one of those things, like if it did something, it was nice, but you wouldn't bank on it. But yeah, let's keep going. So once per turn army, enemy hero phase. So this is if you're taking multiple black coaches, you'll only be able to use this on 1 black coach. So you're probably only going to see 1 coach in the list. Like, I don't think you're going to be spamming lots of coaches, because this here is very, very cool, very, very awesome, and is what makes the new black coach so nice. So yeah, I don't think you're going to be seeing multiple coaches being spammed, but having that 1 coach in your army is going to make it feel great. So let's get on into what this actually does. So again, it's once per turn army, any hero phase. You'll be using this in your hero phase and the enemy hero phase. Pick one of the following to apply for the rest of the turn. So we have Noble Blade. This unit's melee weapons, including companion, so that includes the wheels. Weapons have crit mortal instead of crit auto wound. So if you charge in, buff this up to damage 3. You've also now got 8 attacks with damage 2. You go fishing for those 6s. You make them do lots of mortal wounds, which is awesome. Being able to just go in and sort of mortal stuff to death is great. You go into something that's got lots of high armor and rubbish ward save, then you're going to flick that on, and all of a sudden your coach goes from, you know, being decent rend, decent damage to doing mortals. And obviously, because it's only crit mortals, that's when you roll the 6 to hit, you're still going to be good rend and good damage, as well as doing mortal wounds. So it just really, really helps the damage potential of the coach there. And again, when you're fighting to those high armor targets, that's going to be great. Unholy Grail, pick a friendly Nighthaunt unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit. Each time that unit uses the rally command, you receive 3 additional rally points. That kind of makes the Spirit Torment blush. The Spirit Torment, obviously, being a hero unit, is 130 points. Only gives you 3 additional rally rolls. That's an important stipulation to make within this. I think a lot of people missed this the first time they read it. It gives you 3 rally points. So when you use a rally, you roll 6 dice, and for each 4+, you get a rally point, and then you spend those rally points to either heal or return a slain model up to the number of points that you spent within health-wise. This just gives you 3 rally points. So it's essentially like you get an extra 3 4+s already predetermined. So if you roll those 6 dice, and if you got all 6 4+s, for example, you get 6 rally points from that. And the black coach used this, you'd now have 9 points from rolling those 6 4+s, if that makes sense. So there's no rolling 3 extra dice and seeing if you get those points. You just get a solid 3 points, which for healing things is going to be fantastic. It means if something bigger like your Hex Wraiths or Spirit Hosts are going to be nearby this thing when you use it, you're essentially just getting a whole one back before you've even rolled any of the dice to see if you get another one back. It's going to be great for healing our heroes. All our big heroes and things are 7 wounds a piece anyway, so 3 health back already is going to feel great, and let alone if you roll anything else. And I can't see why you wouldn't, because it's a friendly Nighthaunt unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit, so it's always going to be wholly within 12 inches of itself. So being a 12 wound black coach, being able to heal itself as well, and again you're still going to roll those nice 6 rally dice anyway to see if you get any additional points. That just makes the healing factor of this really, really nice, and that's something that I really liked in this 2nd edition version of the black coach, where it used to have a table and it would level up and things. It used to wholly return models to units, and this is essentially going to give you that same thing. Obviously the Nexus of Grief has just come out, and that heals at the end of every turn. That heals D3 back to units, or heals them D3. So if you combine the terrain, you now combine the back coach, Lady O, Spectral Law, the spell, those kind of like the healing is just kind of going crazy, crazy potential. And yeah, I really like that. So whether we see the Spirit Torment in the new Battle Tome changed, maybe it's not going to be like a rally machine anymore. Who knows? Maybe this is the kind of wording it will get. But as written at the moment, the Black Coach healing is, yeah, going to be out healing the Spirit Torment. So it's even less reasons to use that. And yeah, let's keep going. So there's another one as well, and it's Tome of Undead Lore, and it gives this unit Wizard 1. So you can even turn the Black Coach into a wizard. And that's what I was meaning before, where so this is the 4th iteration of the Black Coach. Each one before it has been wildly different, but it seems like they've taken the kind of best parts of each different kind of iteration that they've done. So you've got a really high damage one, you've got a healing support one, and you've even got a wizard a wizard one there. And because that's just wizard one, that's, you know, you're going to be able to cast and try and unbind things with your Black Coach. So say that you've taken a list where you've got a Guardian of Souls and a Black Coach, and you've taken this version of the Black Coach. Your Guardian of Souls gets killed, then you're black, and you need, you know, you have no more spellcasters, but you need a certain spell within a pinch. Then you can turn your Black Coach into a wizard, be able to proc things up that way. And even if you've got heavy spellcasters in your list, and you want to just get more spell utility down on the table, then you're going to be able to do that. And I think that that is absolutely fantastic. And I love this ability because it just lets you use the Black Coach how you want to see fit. And where this changes in each hero phase, you can just change on the fly. Like all of a sudden you want to go into combat. Okay, I want to do mortal wounds. Okay, now I need healing. Now I need a wizard. That's just going to be really nice. And it doesn't stop there, because even though we get to choose between those, we have 2 more abilities to go. So we've got a once per turn army, any hero phase. So once again, same as before, if you had multiple Black Coaches, you're only going to get to choose to do this with one of them. It's any hero phase, so yours or your opponent's. You pick an objective that you do not control to be the target. For the rest of the turn, while enemy units are contesting the target objective, they cannot score critical hits while this unit is also contesting it. Hit rolls that would be critical hits score hits instead. And that's awesome. So you think, obviously, as Nighthaunt players, how useful crit auto wounds are, things like that, and crit mortals. You can just use this where you pick the objective, and there's no range on this either. It's just pick an objective. You don't have to be able to see it. You don't have to be in range of it. You just pick an objective on the table, board wide, and then if the enemy is near that objective, so contesting, so if they're within 3 inches of the objective, then they just suddenly lose all critical hits. You do have to get the Black Coach in there as well, because it has to be while this unit is also contesting it. So you basically pick the objective that the enemy unit's by, you charge a Black Coach on in, and then as long as the Black Coach is there as well, they lose all of their crit abilities, which is huge. And there's no dice roll. Like I said, there's no dice roll, there's no range, there's no visibility check, there's no nothing. It's just, oh, that unit has horrible crit mortals. Okay, now they don't. Think of, you know, how many big hammer units in the game rely on something like crit mortals. Again, one of the boogeymen of the game at the moment. Chaos Chosen, no mortals for you. Varengard, no mortals for you. You made the mistake of standing in that objective. Well, I'm going to turn off those crit mortals, and then I'm going to charge in with all my stuff and just slaughter them. So you're really dampening the enemy's ability to be able to do damage to you, while also at the same time you could pick like Noble Blade, and you've turned yourself into a crit mortal machine, and then yeah, they can't do much about it. And because obviously the way that Ethereal is written, losing something like crit mortals and then having to go through that 4+5 Ethereal save, 6+ ward is very annoying for the enemy to have to deal with. And with how much like extra recursion we're seeing and healing potential with things, that's just amazing to be able to do. So yeah, big plays for that one. Again, helping you take those objectives and just sort of neutering the enemy. Perfect for Nighthaunt because we love debuffing things to death, and now we're just getting to do it more with the Black Coach. And we also have an extra ability in here, which is Spectral Carriage. And for the rest of the phase, so this is in your charge phase, add 1 to the number of dice rolled when making charge rolls for this unit to a maximum of 3. So if everything else wasn't already enough, and using that one stop no return, you now get 3d6 charges in every one of your charge phases with your Black Coach, which when you're using Deathstalkers as a battle formation to be able to run and charge and or retreat and charge, now your Black Coach has a 3d6 charge. The resurgence on the Black Coach, because I don't see them very often in competitive builds. Like I said, it's a fantastic miniature. Everyone loves to see a Black Coach on the table, but they've just been very expensive for, you know, not bringing much to the table. And now that this version of it has so much utility, it has this crazy ability to be able to just turn off critical hits for enemies, and it has a 3d6 charge. Like, oh, I love this version of Black Coach. I think this one has become my favourite. I haven't even played with it yet, but on paper, as much as I used to love the whole returning D3 entire whole models to a unit, I think I can give that up for the rest of that, for this combat potential and a 3d6 charge. You do lose because the old the faction pack Black Coach has the ability to return slain non-unique heroes. It also has the impact hits, which is something that I think is a little sad to lose. But I mean, you know, considering how much good stuff's in this, like, you can't have everything. So yeah, losing impact mortals. And it also has the teleport, which it's now lost from its Warscroll, but that isn't actually gone for good. There's lots of other ways to get teleporting in your Nighthaunt list. If you didn't want to use Deathstalkers, we have the Vanishing Phantasms battle formation, so you could still technically teleport the Black Coach. There's obviously other alternative means and other units that can teleport themselves and others. Aurich the Drowner and Dreadblade Harrows can teleport and do those kind of fun things. So, you know, pinching enemy terrain, being able to teleport into a back objective. It's like the Black Coach won't have to worry about doing that anymore, because now instead you're probably going to most of the time want to be buffing up your crit mortals and going in with a 3d6 charge and going ham, instead of worrying about teleporting to the back of the table and just kind of sitting on the edge and not doing much, but playing that kind of objective game. Instead, the Black Coach has now become an absolute hammer. So that's awesome to see. And I really like this version of the Black Coach. And I think you're going to see it a lot more. A lot of Nighthaunt players seem very, very excited to bring this version of the Black Coach. So yeah, that is everything. I know I've gone on for a little while, but I like to try and talk about these things and different applications of using them, what units might like them, might not like them. Again, because we have the battle tome that's going to be coming out soon, depending how these interact with other rules for the Nighthaunt thing might kind of differ on opinions, but you know, as they're written right now, those are kind of how I am seeing things. Whether that's due to change, obviously only Games Workshop are going to know until we get our hands on more of those rules. But I would love to hear in the comments down below, what do you guys think of this? Are you going to be using either of these brand new Warscrolls? Are you thinking of using any of the new Artefacts of Power? Or do any of the two new battle formations kind of you know, take your fancy? Do you think you're going to be using either of those? Is there something that I've maybe missed with one of these? Again, quick recap of battle formations. I still think Deathstalkers is going to be the one, but I think Blades has some potential play to it, making those sustainable fights. Even like with the Black Coach there, again, like we said, things that are Rend 2, you charge on into the enemy, you don't manage to kill everything, then all of a sudden it goes to your opponent's turn, you're like, okay, I'm going to power up my coach, or debuff your unit by -1 save, so now my coach is essentially Rend 3, and then also give him crit mortals. It's like it just, yeah, puts the damage right on through. So yeah, I think Blades is going to be great, and again, Grimghast Reapers are going to love that. Artifacts of Power, Stave is the one that I think has play. The other two to me don't really appeal at all. Again, I think Amulet is probably like future proofing. Maybe this is going to come more helpful when we see what happens with Craven Throne Guard, but if they stay the same like they are now, where they don't get affected by modifiers anyway, then I don't see the point of taking a thing where you have to roll a dice to ignore something we pretty much already ignore. So yeah, we'll see about that one. I suppose it does help the, is it Pyregeists, the warband that's in our list, because they do some shooting attacks. But again, I don't think it's worth burning a whole artifact over that. And then it's also behind a dice roll anyway, so you roll a 1 or a 2, and then this is just moot. Yeah, so I think Stave and Blades are interesting, but I still think you're probably going to see Light Shard and Deathstalkers a lot. And then going forward, Kurdos. This Kurdos is way better, way better than the old Kurdos. But in terms of big competitive builds, I still think our other heroes, as they are at the moment, are going to be more bang for your buck, because he's still although this one isn't any more expensive, but is way better in my opinion. It's still 190 points for something that, again, all our units have a lot of combat prowess anyway, and you want to be using your heroes for sort of utility support, in my opinion. And talking about points, we didn't talk about it at the time, but this black coach here is more expensive than the faction pack one. The faction pack black coach is 240 points. This new black coach is 280 points, so it's 40 points more, but I think that's fair enough considering how much of a better combat profile it has and the amount of utility it brings with these abilities here, and getting off those wild charges, and especially inside Deathstalkers, where you can now run and 3d6 charge with your black coach, as well as crit mortaling +1 damage on your main weapons as well. So, you know, seeing the black coach scream across things and 10 hex race into an enemy unit is going to spell a lot of damage, and things that, you know, people are going to be very terrified of seeing that, I am sure. But again, let me know in the comments down below what you think. I know I've been rambling for quite a while, as I tend to do, but again, I like to try and cover those bases there. But thank you very much for watching, guys. As always, stay safe. Happy wargaming.